Every civilization believed the black spheres were silent. For more than 12,000 years, they drifted through the galaxy without a single recorded transmission. They never negotiated. They never threatened. They never defended themselves. They simply watched. Generations rose and disappeared beneath their unblinking gaze. Empires collapsed. Stars were harvested. Entire species vanished into history. The black spheres never reacted. Until today. At exactly 0317 Coordinated Terran Time, every observatory connected to the interstellar deep array registered the same impossible event. Every black sphere, regardless of where it was located, emitted a burst of energy on a frequency that should not have been capable of propagating through normal space. The pulse lasted less than a tenth of a second. Then every sphere stopped. Not one. Not dozens. Every single one. For the first time since humanity had encountered them, the observers were no longer observing. They were waiting. Captain Maya was halfway through her morning briefing aboard the exploration carrier Resolute when every display on the bridge went dark. The holographic tactical map dissolved into static before rebuilding itself around a single flashing icon. One of the black spheres. Then another. Another. Within seconds the display filled with thousands of identical symbols, each highlighted in crimson. Commander Elias looked up from his console. Captain, every sphere just changed orientation. Maya frowned. Changed orientation toward what? Nobody answered. Not because they refused. Because every calculation returned a different answer. Some pointed beyond the galactic core. Others toward empty intergalactic space. Several appeared to face regions where absolutely nothing existed. It made no sense. Until Dr. Sarin quietly spoke from the science station. They aren't pointing at locations. Silence swept across the bridge. They're pointing at something moving. The room became very still. Objects in deep space didn't move that fast. Not on a galactic scale. Within minutes the Terran Science Directorate requested every research vessel report to Lunar Command. The emergency conference included military leaders, astrophysicists, mathematicians, xenologists, quantum engineers, and the surviving members of the Antarctic Archive expedition. The same archive that had warned humanity about the black spheres. The ancient chamber beneath the Antarctic ice was reopened. The crystalline memory structures remained exactly as they had been left. Except one. A pillar that had been completely inactive during the previous expedition now glowed with a pale blue light. Its surface rippled like liquid glass. As Maya stepped closer, ancient symbols rearranged themselves across the crystal. Not randomly. They were translating themselves. The archivist had left another message. One that had remained locked until the black spheres received whatever signal had just reached them. No one in the room spoke. For the first time since discovering the archive, the scientists weren't excited. They were afraid. Because if the builders had programmed this message to unlock only after a reply arrived, then they had always expected someone to answer. Maya stepped toward the illuminated pillar while the rest of the chamber instinctively held their positions. Nobody had ordered them to stop. They simply didn't want to be the first to stand too close to technology that had waited thousands of years for this exact moment. The crystal's glow intensified. Then the air itself began to vibrate. It wasn't sound. Every instrument in the chamber confirmed there were no audible frequencies being produced. Yet everyone could feel a pressure that settled somewhere behind the eyes, as though the archive had found another way to communicate. A lattice of light unfolded above the pillar. It wasn't a recording. It reacted. The figure that formed looked similar to the archivist Maya had encountered before, but something was different. Its edges flickered erratically, and entire sections of its body dissolved into static before rebuilding themselves a heartbeat later. Dr. Sarin stared in disbelief. It's damaged. The holographic figure slowly raised its head. Its luminous eyes swept across the room, pausing briefly on each member of the expedition before settling on Maya. When it finally spoke, its voice carried none of the calm certainty they remembered. Emergency Archive Protocol, activated. The translation software hesitated for nearly 3 seconds before continuing. Observer network status, compromised. Every scientist in the chamber exchanged uneasy glances. The archivist continued. If this message has been unlocked, then the network has received a reply. A cold silence settled over the chamber. Maya took one careful step forward. Who replied? The hologram remained motionless. Instead of answering directly, Thousands of star systems appeared around it, suspended like glowing dust in the darkness. Entire spiral galaxies rotated silently above the chamber floor. One by one, tiny points of light vanished. Not exploded. Simply, disappeared. No flash. No debris. No radiation. One instant they existed. The next, they had never been there. The simulation accelerated. Dozens became hundreds. Hundreds became thousands. Entire sectors of the projected universe went dark as if erased by an invisible hand. The archivist finally spoke again. We did not construct the black spheres to observe civilizations. Confused murmurs spread through the room. The hologram corrected itself. We constructed them, to watch for the return of the devourer. Nobody breathed. For the first time since humanity uncovered the Antarctic archive, they realized they had misunderstood the builders completely. The black spheres had never been studying humanity. Humanity had simply been living inside the territory they were guarding, and whatever had just answered their signal, was coming back. The chamber fell completely silent. Nobody reached for a keyboard. Nobody whispered another theory. Even the autonomous survey drones hovering beneath the vaulted ceiling had stopped moving, their processors diverted toward recording every word the archivist spoke. Captain Maya finally broke the silence. The devourer. She said carefully. Is that a species? The holographic figure remained still for several long seconds. No. The answer echoed through the chamber. It is not biological. A new projection bloomed above the crystalline pillar. At first it looked like an ordinary galaxy viewed from above. Billions of stars spiraled peacefully around a brilliant core. Then the image rewound. The stars began moving backward. Entire civilizations vanished from existence as history unfolded in reverse. Worlds reformed. Nebulae collapsed into clouds of gas. Time itself seemed to retreat. Then everyone saw it. Something was missing. A section of the galaxy millions of light years across had simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed. Removed. The surrounding stars drifted naturally into the empty space as though the missing region had never been there at all. Dr. Saran's face turned pale. That's impossible. The archivist answered without hesitation. Correct. A ripple of unease spread through the room. The devourer does not destroy matter. It deletes causality. No one understood. The archivist anticipated their confusion. Your civilizations experience time as a sequence. It experiences reality as editable information. Another image appeared. A planet orbited a yellow star. Oceans shimmered beneath white clouds. Without warning, the planet vanished. Its moon continued orbiting empty space. The star's gravity behaved as though the planet had never formed. Even the orbital paths of neighboring worlds adjusted themselves instantly. History rewrote itself. Only the black spheres continued to remember what had been erased. Captain Maya felt her pulse quicken. So that's why you built them. The archivist nodded. The observer network exists because memory cannot survive without witnesses. If every witness disappears. The hologram paused. Then reality accepts the edit. A chill swept through everyone in the chamber. For thousands of years, humanity had assumed the black spheres were watching civilizations. Now they understood the horrifying truth. The spheres weren't protecting intelligent life. They were protecting existence itself from being forgotten. Before anyone could ask another question, alarms erupted across the archive. Not human alarms. Ancient builder alarms. Deep, resonant tones rolled through the frozen chamber as every crystal lit up simultaneously. The translation system struggled to keep pace. Warning. Observer units entering interception mode. Estimated contact. The voice stopped. Every display in the room flickered. Then a single number appeared. 94 hours. Nobody spoke. 94 hours. The number remained suspended above the ancient console, unwavering, almost indifferent. It wasn't counting down yet. It simply existed, like a sentence already passed. General Hayes was the first to regain his composure. Contact with what? The archivist didn't answer immediately. Instead, another projection spread across the chamber floor. This one wasn't a map of stars or galaxies. It was a network. Thousands upon thousands of black spheres were connected by faint lines of light stretching across interstellar space. Together they formed an unimaginably vast lattice surrounding the Milky Way. Captain Maya slowly realized what she was seeing. This isn't an observation network. The archivist nodded. It is a containment boundary. A collective shiver passed through the room. Every sphere humanity had ever encountered, every mysterious object drifting silently through space had never been positioned at random. They had been standing guard. Dr. Saran zoomed the projection inward. The glowing lattice wasn't complete. One section flickered. Several spheres near the edge of the galaxy were dark. Offline. Destroyed. The chamber fell silent again. Maya stared at the dead section of the barrier. That's where the signal came from. No, the archivist replied. That is where the reply entered. The distinction hit like a physical blow. Something hadn't merely answered the black spheres. Something had crossed the boundary. A technician monitoring the Terran deep array suddenly interrupted. Captain, we're receiving live feeds from every sphere in explored space. The room's walls transformed into panoramic windows. Thousands of synchronized camera feeds filled every surface. Every black sphere looked exactly the same. Perfectly still. Perfectly silent. Then, without warning, every symbol etched across their matte black surfaces ignited with brilliant white light. Ancient geometric patterns raced across the spheres faster than any human eye could follow. The translation AI tried to interpret the symbols. It failed. Again. And again. Finally, after several agonizing seconds, one fragment resolved into human language. Containment failed. Nothing else translated. Then every sphere moved. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Each rotated by only a few degrees. Yet every astrophysicist in the command center immediately understood the impossible implication. They were no longer facing outward. Every single black sphere had turned toward Earth. For nearly 10 seconds, nobody moved. Every monitor aboard the Resolute. Every military command center. Every observatory from Mars to Europa displayed the same image. Thousands of black spheres. All facing Earth. The silence ended when the fleet's tactical intelligence system issued a warning no one had ever programmed it to give. Unknown fleet detected. The bridge erupted into activity. Commander Elias leaned over his console. I'm getting hundreds of contacts. His voice trailed off. No, thousands. The tactical display filled with new signatures appearing beyond the orbit of Pluto. There was no flash of hyperspace. No wormholes. No measurable acceleration. They were simply, there. The sensors couldn't classify them. They emitted no heat. No radio traffic. No detectable propulsion. It was as though reality itself had decided they had always occupied that region of space. General Hayes spoke over the secure channel. Magnify. The image expanded. The room collectively forgot how to breathe. The objects weren't ships. They weren't stations. Each one resembled a vast shard of absolute darkness, kilometers across, surrounded by space that bent unnaturally around their edges. Light curved toward them before disappearing completely, leaving silhouettes that looked less like machines and more like tears cut into the universe. Dr. Saran whispered, almost to himself. They're not casting shadows. He swallowed. They're swallowing them. Another alarm sounded. The black spheres surrounding Earth suddenly accelerated. Not away from the planet. Toward those impossible objects beyond Pluto. Thousands of ancient guardians crossed the solar system in perfect formation without firing a single weapon. The archivist watched silently. Captain Maya finally asked the question everyone feared. Can they stop it? For the first time since the emergency protocol began, the hologram hesitated. Its luminous form flickered violently. Fragments of corrupted data flashed through the chamber. Ancient battlefields. Entire galaxies burning. Countless black spheres shattered into drifting debris. Then the archivist answered. We do not know. The words landed harder than any warning. Humanity had assumed the builders were unbeatable. The builders themselves weren't certain they could survive what was coming. Outside, the first line of black spheres reached the edge of the solar system. One by one, their symbols blazed brighter than stars. Then they formed a perfect wall between Earth and the darkness waiting beyond Pluto. No one knew who fired first. Later, historians would argue about it for decades. Military analysts would examine sensor logs frame by frame. Quantum physicists would insist that the question itself had no answer because the event unfolded faster than causality could accurately record. What every witness agreed on was this. The stars blinked. Not all of them. Just the ones directly behind the approaching entities. For less than a heartbeat, entire constellations disappeared from the night sky before returning as if nothing had happened. Then the nearest black sphere moved. Not forward. Sideways. It placed itself directly between Earth and the advancing darkness. Its matte black surface cracked for the first time in recorded history. Brilliant white energy erupted from fractures that spread like lightning across its shell, revealing an intricate lattice of impossible geometry beneath. Every other sphere echoed the transformation. Thousands of silent observers became blazing beacons, linked together by columns of white light that stretched across millions of kilometers. The solar system was no longer surrounded by isolated guardians. It had become a single machine. Captain Maya stared at the tactical display in disbelief. They're connecting. Dr. Saran's instruments struggled to keep up. The energy output. He whispered. It's increasing exponentially. No civilization should be capable of producing this much power. The archivist answered quietly. They are not producing it. They are remembering how to use it. A wave rippled through the network. Space itself folded. For one breathtaking instant, the darkness beyond Pluto stopped advancing. The command center erupted in cautious celebration. Cheers echoed across the bridge. Someone actually laughed. Then every alarm activated at once. The impossible contacts hadn't slowed. They had simply allowed the black spheres to complete their formation. The tactical display updated. Containment barrier, breached. One of the luminous spheres flickered. Its light dimmed. Then, without any explosion or debris, it vanished completely. Not destroyed. Not shattered. Erased. The gap it left behind was only a few kilometers wide. But every remaining sphere immediately shifted toward it, desperately trying to seal the opening. The archivist lowered its head. Its voice was almost sorrowful. It has begun. Captain Maya looked from the fading barrier to the advancing darkness. For the first time in her career, she found herself hoping humanity had arrived far too late. Because if this ancient defense maintained for millions of years could fail, then whatever came through that breach had never truly been defeated. It had only been delayed. To be continued in episode 5.